Hey, what's up? We're live, it
Hey,
seems. How's it going, Aaron?
good. How you doing, Wythe?
Good. This is my friend Aaron, game designer, and we thought we'd do a quick why we work check-in, just talk about some of the games that Aaron was working on. We've caught up here and there over the last year, but we were working together on some TTRPG and related card and board game ideas, and of course, time and day jobs and such conspire to mean that we have not been working as closely together. So it's nice to have an excuse. We just put some time on the calendar to kind of just walk through some of the things you've been up to. I know, Aaron, we've been recently talking about your word game that you're developing. So
Yeah.
we moved into video game space as well, which is your
Yeah.
talents.
Yeah. So I had this idea a while back. Wordle, of course, everyone knows of Wordle if you're a Wordle player. Um, I was thinking one day, like, what if it was the opposite, like reverse Wordle? And the initial name for the game I came up with was Eldrow, which is Wordle backwards. Um,
It's a cool name.
it's the name I've settled on though, is Word Snare. And so the premise of the game is it chooses a random word for you, and it's a secret word, and then you have to guess as many words that aren't the word. But the every time you guess the letter that's in the target word, it forces you to keep using it. So like you want me to show you? I got it on the browser here.
Yeah, yeah. So, before we dive into that, I was
Sure.
just gonna say, do you want to? Can you do a quick intro of just sort of who you are and
Oh
some of
yeah.
the stuff in general? So we'll come in and out. This is great. We're gonna dive
Yeah.
right into Eldrow slash Word Snare,
Yeah.
which maybe consider Eldrow's a pretty sick name. It's pretty fantastic. In a good
El-
sense.
Eldrow sounds like this spaghetti western name for like Drist,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's legally distinct to its steward for all the way down. But yeah.
Hola, me llamo Eldrow.
Before before we do um, the Wordle that is not Wordle, that is a totally
Right.
different game, Word Snare. Yeah, Aaron, who are you, and what are some of the things? Anything you want to shout out? Basically, you've been working on.
Sure.
I'm happy to sing your praises as a writer and an artist.
I'm Aaron. Or Aaron H is my author name. I wrote Rain Thieves. I've been helping Wythe with various technical things over the years. I designed Robot Hospital. Uh, on sale now on stillfleet.com. Grab a copy. Supplies are limited. Um, and designed other games. I'm a web developer by day. I do music and writing and a lot of stuff. I'm trying to do less, honestly. That could be a whole topic on its own, is how to do less. I'm trying to learn how to do that.
I was gonna say we could talk about that because we have you and I have both talked about that doing too
Hmm.
much and what is a hobby versus something that actually takes time and really money and like attention and is
Hmm.
it distracting from other hobbies or other obligations, and these are questions that we've come around. Also, these things are really time bound and change in different life stages and as the world changes around us. That's I think one reason also we set this up was we were both reflecting on like, man, it's really been a rough couple years here, and just like in general. And then in
Yeah.
addition, if you're doing kind of startup-y game design stuff, you're like, I don't know, like does it matter? Will it work? Like
Right.
is it
Right.
more freeing, less freeing? So those are I think like high level themes we can talk about. I'm also just excited to hear, the game, the crunchy game goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a good intro. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that whoever's listening, I assume it's mostly like bots and spy agencies of various kinds keeping tabs
Right.
on leftists.
Right.
But
We're
yeah,
training
they're
some AI model right now.
yeah, yeah. They're gonna call it Eldrow now. You're gonna see Anthropic's next release is Eldrow 1.0.
I just want to say that my favorite dinner recipe is mixing gelatin with carpet nails and then pureeing them up really well, and you serve it over pasta. It's delicious. It's great to feed to children. They love it.
Training AI. Yeah. So we'll see. We could talk to the AI bubble. That's come up in basically every conversation I've had
Yeah.
recently. Before we do that, I guess let's dive into Word Snare, right? So you
Yeah,
worked on
sure.
Word Snare. Maybe we'll show it and you can walk us through what it is. But
Yeah.
just to kind of throw it out there, maybe you can talk about design process because in the
Yeah.
past when we've
Yeah.
had you on and when you and I have talked, it's always been really focused on tabletop games, not always RPGs because you make card games and board games, but we've talked a lot about RPGs and really player experiences at the table and kind of inner human
Hmm.
dynamics. And I think it's different with computer games for a variety of reasons, but
Yeah.
computer games, what the fuck is a computer? With video games. So um, Again, be kind. I'm an unfrozen vampire who just learned about computers. It turns out.
Computers.
Computers. So let me add this to the stage. So this is
Sure.
your draft. So why don't you walk us through what we're seeing, kind of show us the
Yeah.
game, and I might ask you more kind of designy questions if that's fine.
So, I mean, if you've played Wordle before, you'll recognize the format. You've got 5 empty boxes, you've got a keyboard. Um, so the first, I mean, I did put a rules thing at the top, although when I introduce this to people, I like to ask them just like figure it out because I like to see what can you infer just looking at the interface. And so, um, like in any kind of like digital space, you have to really focus on the affordances and things people already know to try to guide them towards interacting with the system in a way that is productive, like it in that it changes the state of a system in a positive way. um and I mean, I guess like tabletop and card games are they're like that also. There's maybe more affordances because we all reuse ideas that have been used before, we just synthesize them differently, and so I guess that's really no different here. So give me a 5-letter word. It has to be a real word, but any
Okay.
5-letter word.
Any 5-letter word.
Mhm.
Latch.
Great word. Great. So that scored us 5 points, and we can put another word in. So all blue means that all of the letters are safe.
So
So
sorry. The idea is we're just guessing words
we're
that aren't
trying
the word,
we're
right?
trying to not guess the word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Not guess the word. And how many? And it's just like I do it any number of times, and it's like high
Yeah.
score.
Yeah. Infinite
Cool.
guesses. And the more I'll explain some of the scoring stuff in a moment, but once you start to see it. But go ahead and pick another 5-letter word.
Okay, cool. Oh, it is also Taylor Z in the chat. What's up? Taylor says it's like Wordle
Oh, what's up?
Minesweeper, which I love the idea
Yeah.
of Wordle meets Minesweeper. That's a
Yeah,
fun
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
How about years, which we know the A is
Oh,
safe. Ooh, not
okay.
safe.
So E and R are hooked. That means all subsequent guesses have to use E and R.
Oh, fuck my life.
Okay, so give me another guess. It has to use E and R. And I would say we know that E and R are not, like, we can use them in these places and it's not for sure going to lock us into them. Like we could use it there. We could use it in other places, but we might be stuck using it in those places then.
Is the goal to make, like, from a player perspective to
Mhm.
maximize points? Should I do like bears and then,
Sure.
just I know that it's
Yeah.
okay. All
And
right.
so you'll see on the bottom of the keyboard, some of the letters are starting to darken. The more you use a letter, the less points it's worth.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
so it's incentivizing you to diversify your guessing pool, so you're not just spamming very simple modifications or permutations on words. You could do like pairs. Oh shit,
Yeah. Or
sorry.
gears. What is red?
Okay, so red
You
means
just
it's
blew up my whole
locked.
game, Aaron.
Yeah, sorry, man.
No, it's fine.
I don't know what the word is. That was just an unlucky guess. Red is a locked letter, means that it will always, it is there. It doesn't give you any points at all. It is just dead weight, but you have to use it every time. So we have to
Got
use
it.
just P words that also have E and R in them.
E and R. Okay,
Mhm.
so we could do Perry, Perry.
RRY. Okay.
Okay.
So it's
We
still
could
safe.
do P. We could do. Well, we know we could do penis. I guess we could do perch. Yeah, we could do
What do you want to do, man?
perch. We'll do perch.
Perch. Okay. That's
We
also
could do
safe.
P-E. I'm trying to think of P-E-S. Pestle?
Uh,
No, that's
got to use an R.
6.
You have to use
Oh,
an
it
R.
has to have an R.
Yeah.
Pre something pre. I don't know what comes next.
Could do, oh well, I was gonna say you could do preem, but I don't know that preem is in there. Preem is a slang word. I used the Scrabble dictionary
What would
as
pre mean? Like premium?
like premium. Yeah.
Premium. Okay.
Yeah, primo. Yeah.
Press. Taylor suggests press.
Press. Fantastic. Okay. So R is the second letter. So we have
Oh
to use
no.
PR. The E is still floating. It could be in any of the spots, but we know we have to use PR.
Right.
So, for example, a word, this is very, bringing back the Stillfleet, prone could be the target word.
Go
We
for it.
haven't used O or N. Okay, here we go.
Oh no.
Okay, so now,
Prole. What else could this
prol?
be?
You want to do prol?
I don't know if it'll count it, but I'm trying to think of what other
Oh, it
words.
did.
Okay. It can't be a B. D
It could be a B or
G.
B would be safe. We could do probe.
No. But probe. Yeah, sorry, probe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to think of words that like prom isn't a word. Uh, Prog. That's what I would have thought. Prol would be slang as well. Vex. It's not a Z. It's interesting
Um
because now it's like we almost can figure out like what word it is. I just
yeah,
can't. It's not a S or a C, right?
uh
Oh, it could be an S. It could be an
it's
S
probably
actually.
an S is my
It's probably an
guess.
S. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, but S isn't used because S is safe.
Oh, you're right.
Prove.
Oh, well, obviously we should do S.
Taylor has guessed that it's V, which I
Proof.
think is likely because I can't think of another one after probe
I
and
agree.
prove.
Um
It's not
I
an
already did
H. It's not a
prone.
J. So I don't know that we have a lot of options here, right? Because
Okay.
we basically are locked in, so
Except
we
except
have
our
to do
fate.
it.
Okay. Yep, that was it.
Damn.
So our final score was 12 guesses with 472 points. So the way that scoring works, it uses I have kind of a there's some funny math happening behind the scenes, but it's essentially what happens is the more you use a letter, the less that letter is worth. But each time you make a successive guess, it increases the multiplier. So you can see down here, our final multiplier was times 2,233. So it's taking whatever the final value is and multiplying it by that. Um, actually, that seems really high. I think that's what the multiplier is. That might be incorrect. That might be a bug. But anyways, you can see the score here along the side. Like the first guess is only worth 5 points. And then later on, the guesses became worth more and more, especially the last one, 144 points for a single letter. So like the scoring works the way that it does in a way to incentivize risk taking. So you want to use more diverse letters because it gets you more points, but it also is more likely to expose you to getting hooked. Um,
Right.
so game does support 4 and 6 letters. Also, I added this mostly as an experiment. So if you turn on dyslexia-friendly font, it uses an actual dyslexia-friendly font for the whole game. I don't see this being done enough in games, and I wanted to see how hard it actually was to do it. It turns out, much like adding dark mode, it's surprisingly easy, and everyone should be doing this.
Yeah, almost like computers are very good at very simple things like inverting black and white or font
Right.
replacement. Like
Yeah.
it's 2026, bro. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, can you say a little about? I mean, there's
Sure.
lots to talk about, but about the accessibility thoughts. I didn't until this right before this call. I didn't even think about this. I know a little bit of dyslexia, but never thought that of course this would go into type design and that there would be types that are easier to read and harder to read for
Sure.
different. Probably there's all sorts of visual conditions, maybe neurological conditions. But can you say anything about like as a game designer and web engineer, like how you even came to that thought of like, oh, I bet this is something really easy I can throw in my game.
Well, I mean, I work in web as my day job, so that's a big part of it is dealing with accessibility and stuff. It's a common thing that comes up. But I think as a neurodivergent person myself, like I have to use dark mode pretty much everywhere because my eyes are very light sensitive. So especially if I have to stare at a screen for a long time, um, if it has a field of white and there's just a little bit of black text on it, especially if the font is small, it literally gives me headaches. This is one time at my last job, I had to do a deploy at my job using Heroku, and we were doing our deploys early in the morning. So I had to get up at 6 in the morning in the middle of winter, so it was dark as heck outside. And I open up my laptop, and Heroku does not have dark mode, and so I'm staring at the screen. I literally had a migraine, like it was so bad. And it was took me everything I had to not put like expletives into the email that I sent to Heroku asking them please add dark mode.
Yeah. Like I looked it up. Here's the code.
Yeah,
Please insert. Yeah.
right. I will do
Uh,
it for you for free.
I promise it will not Superman 3 small amounts of your profit over to my bank account offshores. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like you and I feel like I hear this from all my friends. They prefer dark mode, but I have like the opposite problem. Like if it's
Mhm.
not black text on white, like I can't read it. So I
And
struggle with
that's
even
fine.
with printed books that
Yeah.
are dark mode. So it's interesting how that is something that affects millions of people, and as you say, it's so easy. It's like, why would you not just do
And
it?
I'm not saying that dark mode is superior by any means, but it's not just an aesthetic thing. Like I think a lot
Right,
of
right.
websites treat it like this is a premium feature, and it's like F you, dude. Like I need this so I don't like have my brain hurt.
No, totally. That's,
Yeah.
I'm agreeing. It's like, if it's something that helps anyone and it's very trivial, it's adding, a small number of lines of code. It takes maybe half an hour to check it or whatever. It's like there's not that much to do to just make a screen slightly different in 2026. Again, it's not, it's like, why wouldn't you do that? So the dyslexia font as well made me think like, oh yeah, why don't I
Mhm.
see that more as like a button
Yeah.
everywhere? I've never seen that before you showed it to me, and maybe I don't play enough, cool indie video games that do that, but
I can
thought that was a
only
cool touch.
I can only guess that yeah, I see Vex. Yeah, it's same thing. A lot of apps I've seen literally have it as a premium feature.
That's
Yeah.
wild. That's so wild.
Um I think the reason you don't see the dyslexia friendly font more often is because I think people just don't know about it. And that's a really good reason to do um a really good reason to do awareness about this stuff
Yeah.
is if you know that like you could be a very the uber kind Mr. Rogers of developers, and if you just don't know that dyslexic people would be benefited by having a better font, you wouldn't know to add it.
Right, right. Sorry, just as soon as you said Mr. Rogers, I pictured him in a cyberpunk gauntlet with a keyboard, and he was like hacking into the net, and was just saying howdy, like everyone, he just shows up next to Neo in the Matrix, and he's just like howdy.
Mr. Rogers hacking show, instead of I'm in, it's howdy neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's such a memorable, yeah, two-line way to introduce yourself to a new environment, but different tone. No, so that's great. So accessibility thing is cool, and it's preferable to have a few of them. Yeah, I think I do wonder about the type aspect. I realize you're not a type designer, so this might be a
Mhm.
question for maybe we need a type designer on, which I've wanted. Maybe we can get Eric back actually and talk at some point
That'd be cool.
about type design. But I think these are cool things to consider and sort of what is allowed or usable. Um, a monospace, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Vex, what's up? I see we got some chatting.
Vex said earlier, a lot of dyslexic find various dyslexia-friendly fonts hard to read. Sure, I'm not dyslexic, so I don't know what that would be, but it's adding a single font was easy. Having it do multiple fonts would be similarly easy. Um, so I think it's just something that more people should do.
Yeah, and I realized Vex was suggesting we have Tim Denis on the show, and that would be great. I think
Yeah.
that would be rad. Type is something I'm not at all an expert on, or that's not my main nerddom, but it's certainly something I like and know more about than computer games,
Yeah.
as I called them moments before. So yeah, I mean, these are all cool. I think it's interesting how a word game especially gets into some of these same questions of affordances and, like you said,
Mhm.
about rules. What will players? How do they get it? Obviously, when you make a kind of Wordle adjacent game that looks kind of like Wordle, people will just start putting in stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you gotten have you play tested this and have you gotten cool feedback? Like, how does that work?
So
Because again, I'm thinking RPGs, like you get people on Discord and you send them a PDF, but this is obviously very different.
so I've made an iOS version of the game. You can see it there, sort of. It really wants to blur it.
It
Okay.
doesn't want to show your like credit card when it pops up or something. Yeah, no, it's fine. We
Yeah.
get the idea.
Yeah, there we go. You can see like you get the idea. It's the same interface, but it's on iOS. And so I've been sending it to my friends to test, and the last iteration of the game had a timer on it, and so in between guesses, it would have this like little like Mission Impossible style wick burning down, and when it got to the bottom, it would lower your multiplier, and if your multiplier gets down to nothing, then the next time it burns down, it reveals the next letter in the word, and like pretty much unanimously across everyone, they were all like, "This feature is too stressful. You don't need it. Take it out." And so I was like, "All right," but I
It
kind of want
sounds
to like
very stressful, but it
it's
sounds smart and a cool idea, but very stressful in
like
actuality.
even as someone who's played the game like hundreds of times at this point, like yeah, it was really stressful. I want
Yeah,
to add it
yeah.
back in as like an optional feature, like blitz mode or something.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Always give them the option.
but
I feel like this came up last night with a friend talking about Uncut Gems, which I truly think
Mhm.
is one of the great movies of in modern cinema.
Mhm.
But it is very strange. It was like, yeah, it's like 2 hours of like a guy fucking up his life. Like every single decision is a horrible decision, and you can't stop him, and you're just along for the ride. And it's Adam Sandler, and it was like, why would I watch that? And it's like, well, because it's beautiful. I was like, oh yeah, I don't know, it's pretty stressful actually. But yeah, sometimes that's
Yeah.
how art be. So yeah, so you sent out versions, and then people
Yeah.
tell you like, I mean, I guess that's all playtesting. Was there
Yeah.
anything you found kind of different with playtesting this as opposed to a card game, or
Um, I think I'm still early on in the playtesting process. Right now, I'm fighting with the Apple Marketplace just to get it to where I can send a link to testers to test it. I've been doing just like in email only invites with a specific testing group that doesn't require that approval. So once I can get it to the more public testing, I'll be able to have more people test it. But I also want to add some like distributed scorekeeping or like the ability to like connect with other people through it, have like some like a backplane to do connection. This does have a feature called set snare where you can type a word in and then you hit the button and then it shows a QR code, or you can do a text message and it will send it to someone else and it gives them the word to guess. So you want to
that's cool.
have you want to pick like the easiest possible word, um like spine or peers or something like that. Put like a lot of vowels and like RNS, into the word, just
Yeah,
to
to fuck them up. Yeah,
yeah, like a word that you would probably use for Wordle as your first guess is a fantastic guess to send to someone else as their snare. um
to lob over and then you could
yeah,
have like yeah, you could track kind of
yeah,
I don't
like
know,
how good are you at
fantasy
sending
play
people
by mail.
snares? Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's
yeah,
cool. I like that idea.
yeah.
I like the building in the hard modes too as a means of or play testing to find out what is a feature that is
Hmm.
core versus a feature that's an add-on that makes the game harder for more experienced players. And that's I do think there's some relevance to TTRPGs with
Hmm.
maybe the rule is cool, but it's like comes up rarely, or it changes the game in a certain way, so you make it like optional, or it even becomes specific to like a place in the game. I was just thinking of
Still,
another. Yeah,
Stillfleet
go ahead.
version 2 adding Thaco.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. In Stillfleet 2, there's definitely we're bringing back Thaco. We're inverting all the roles. Yeah, you want to get low sometimes, high sometimes. Keep them guessing.
Yeah.
No, we're definitely not doing that. We watched this Korean horror show where it was about an app, and if you get the app, you can basically do a short form video. It's like a TikTok style video app where you basically say your name and like birth date or whatever, and you make a wish. You like pray, and then
Mhm.
that thing will come true. But then you will die 24 hours later.
Oh my god.
But it's an app, and it's also it starts with like it's like high schoolers, and like when they figure this out, there's like the smart kid who's like really good at
Yeah.
computers, who's repairing the other kid's computer, and he's like he like hacks it, and it's just like I mean it's not like the app cannot like phones can't do that. He's like, it's not doing it through like the way the iOS app or whatever is written. He's like, and it was a great kind of moment because it's set like now, it's not like an old show. It's like, yeah, if something Final Destination happened and you're like, fuck, my phone's infected with a virus that kills me, like you would, it's like let's look under the hood for like that bug.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just made me think of like you being like, yeah, send a word to your friend, but not that like how much do you like this friend?
He said like I put a bug in the code. It's like one specific word. If you put boobs into it, then you'll die.
Of
Sorry.
course, it's the old school,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
calculator word.
Right.
No, I was thinking, yeah, what is the hardest word? I was like proxy, but there's so many. We should probably think about the hardest words that those are good to start with, right? In word snare slash
So
Eldrow.
one
Uh,
one thing I found is that especially with early testers, I noticed that because people who have played Wordle find it more challenging because they're like preconditioned to look for common words and to try to guess the word. So they want to zero in on the word, whereas this is the opposite. And so there's kind of like a difficulty by proxy because your natural inclination is to want to get to the thing it's leading you towards, but in this you're actually trying to do the opposite.
right,
And
right,
so that
yeah.
actually adds challenge to it, adds
It
friction.
actually is a great game design. I remember this famous 20 years ago, some sociology essay about kind of how to write academic essays and like how
Mhm.
to like in a serious way. It wasn't meant to be a joke. It's like how do you come up with new ideas? It's like take an existing idea you think is cool and try to your best to destroy it, or like take an
Yeah.
existing idea and try to bring it into a new realm where no one's applied it. And it just kind of walks through how this can work for it was like in the middle of a book about writing in the social sciences,
Hmm.
and I found it really helpful thinking about game design where it's like there's something about this rule that gets me. I really don't like how it's used here. Can I move it into a new space? Can I change the die? Can I change one thing about it? Can I invert something? And I think obviously you've done that with Eldrow, but also you could imagine, bringing that mentality to games in general with,
Hmm.
can I take I like what you just said, take the player expectation and then
Hmm.
create a scenario where their expectation works against them and they're like, oh, damn it, I
Hmm.
keep doing the thing I'm trained to do, but
Yeah.
it's different now. And I do think that is a fun way to think about players and some of the delightful, like I'm picturing like a game like Settlers of Catan, but instead
Hmm.
of building infrastructure and doing commerce to amass private wealth.
The anarchists of Catan.
Yeah, it's the constant Neuvenhouse version where you're
Yeah.
building pointless structures that just like,
The bureaucrats of Catan.
and no, I know, and you're like, and everything's free. So it's like, how
Yeah.
would that game function? Like, it actually becomes, even if you use the same pieces, right? How would you
Right.
create procedures to
Yeah.
enable you to have a kind of commune, some sort of weird syndicalist utopian, anti-architecture that like connects people, but not because it's efficient. It's actually the most inefficient is better. And how do you reward that and stuff?
I also love the idea that someone who loves word games will actually be worse off playing a game like this because of that preconditioning. So someone who has no experience with word games at all is likely to have an easier time with respect to that friction, at least, than someone who has played a bunch of Wordle.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I find that true myself with. I remember when word games became really, when there's like Wordle obviously at a moment, but even before that there was Words with Friends, and like
Hmm.
they're actually slightly different than like Scrabble. Like if you played Scrabble a lot as a kid,
Yeah.
or just a lot because you like words, it's like there are certain rules that are different in these online versions,
Huh.
and I feel like it'll like trip you up because it's not
Okay.
a one to one, and your brain, like you just like you're saying, you're kind of expecting like, well, this isn't allowed or whatever. So anyway, I think that's a fun thing as game designers we can think about. I will say Vex was saying they worked on a narrative chess, so basically an expectation reversal game through a game design course, and I think that's really interesting. Like, how do you take something that everyone knows, right, and then
Hmm.
you invert it and use that as just like a departure point. So,
Earlier, but before we started streaming, we were talking about the idea of a game where it's like oops all levels, right? Like the focus is on just leveling up your RPG character, and the stuff that happens in between the adventuring is kind of irrelevant. And I kind of love that idea.
yeah, yeah, we were talking. So that's a good bridge also into some other maybe
Hmm.
game stuff we're working on. One thing I was saying is that for Stillfleet 2, I've been inspired by some story games I've read or played or been around more, ranging from all the way back to like things I was playing before that did influence Stillfleet,
Hmm.
and however much, like Microscope, more recently The Quiet Year, and games like Beakbone and Feather, but more recently games like Stone Top and Holdfast Station and Through the Void that like kind of central, like foreground, the station, or like your community, and it's
Hmm.
not necessarily a sim or managing resources in the board game tradition, but it's more kind of story gamey relationship development. But the idea is that when you're off doing the space adventures or whatever, it's that's not really the focus. Like you're saying, the focus is kind of the downtime, so the downtime becomes the main time, which is to some degree true of real life depending on your job. I mean, maybe your job's more interesting, but for a lot of us, like you kind of zone out, and then it's like
Hmm.
severance, right? Then at the end of the day you
Right.
return to your real life. So I think it'd be interesting to think about that, and I hadn't thought about the leveling because I mean, very often I'm GMing, so it's sort of like not. It's like, yeah, whatever. That's your business, player. But I think it'd be interesting to think through leveling and make, for one, leveling could be seen as kind of boring. Like it's kind of like paperwork. And okay, can we make it a mini game? This has come up with Stillfleet too, with narrative hooks where depending on what faction you helped, you get a certain advanced powers list that's available, and the hook for that is like a story game question you have to answer. So it's really incentivizing the player to stop and report to the refactor in the form of a short, could be one
Right.
sentence thing they actually write that actually has meaning in the game because they're co-developing with everyone else what's happening in the world of the game, but each of them has their own moment to do it, and it leads to ultimately just what list of powers you're picking for that level. But I think that was an aha moment around, without adding any weight to the game, without making it harder or longer to play, just like trying to bring together elements and kind of like you said, foreground the in between and make it a scene as opposed to like, I don't know, do that before the next session.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but no worries if this was just a random idea. I thought it was cool.
Um, I mean, I like the idea. I mean, just in general, I think having, um, I don't. I got sorry. I got an alert on my computer to log into Twitch so I could chat, and then I missed the last like 10 seconds of what you said. Sorry.
You're good. I was just saying, I don't know if you'd mentioned it in passing, and I was like, oh yeah, that's like similar to things I'm thinking about, but I wasn't sure if you were working on anything specific or it was just kind of a
Oh,
passing thought. No worries either way.
yeah. I think other than like the level up idea, which I haven't actually done anything with. It was just an idea I had while driving. I haven't specifically thought about that. I guess. Um, I think maybe my drive for something like that is it feels like the primary focus games like adventuring and such are kind of like the space is very saturated. Like we always have so much focus on the excitement that the day-to-day drivel of an adventurer is still probably different than what we're used to and would still probably be interesting. And so I think that is an underexplored design space.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I think there's something there, and I think a lot of adventure games have at least begun to, like, again, thinking of aspects of commerce or the wider world being modeled in UVG and Stillfleet to like
Hmm.
the way Heart and Spire, especially Heart, moves in that direction with like the communities underneath the Vermissian and like what is going on, even though it doesn't necessarily tie into this wider world. It's like moving in that direction of even an adventure game, is the space interesting? And I think even the OSR, like now with His Majesty the Worm or whatever, and Stone Top, you have these
Hmm.
OSR coded games that are very much like, what kind of cool world stuff can I build in rules wise, procedures wise? I know there's a couple new games, Ink Vein, Wind Revealed, that are
Hmm.
coming out that are like kind of all about this. They're like, oh, it's a traditional hex crawl, but every time you go to a hex, like you do these kind of story gamey moments in a
Hmm.
way, like you use this oracle table, and I think like I think that there's something interesting about the fact that there is a kind of acknowledgement that obviously it's not just as simple as these games are often too much about combat, although I do think that's
Hmm.
at the heart of it, and there's a colonial like violence there as well that's like relived over and over again, like slaying goblins and orcs. But I
Yeah.
do think there's another thing you're saying of like the jobbiness of it, if it's not marked out, at least if it's not like, some games are about that, but if it's not about that, then like what are we doing? We're going on
Right.
quests, like I don't know. It's kind of like kind of BS. It's like reliving this one pretty specific version of fantasy. I think what I've seen as a corrective in a lot of games is that are focused on this specifically are like odysseys, right? Like we're going on a
Hmm.
journey. It's about exploration, and there's different ways that's achieved. And a lot of story games use cards, or they just have this kind of idea of like the world is kind of loose and whatever, but you're on a kind of very specific narrative structure, and you're meant to play
Hmm.
through it probably once realistically, which is less appealing to me, to be honest. But it is interesting to see people think through what they would do differently that still has some of those hallmarks. It still lets you encounter goblins or fantastic cities or an airship or
Yeah.
dragons, or but it's like, or you're in space. I mean, but it's like we're doing something different, right? We're going on a
That's
journey. Yeah.
I am so tired of superhero movies, but what I really want is like shows where it's like the lives of the people where of the people around or the superheroes themselves, but like not them saving the world. I want them dealing with like going to the BMV or something. I find that to be such an interesting space that I wish they did more of. I don't want to see like I don't know, like that the savior complex thing of all the modern movies feels overdone and boring. I just want to see like Captain America have to get lunch in the cafeteria or something.
Yeah, I mean, you might be. I mean, some people do want adventure. They want the thrill, and they want to simulate stuff that's far from their own life that might be boring or sad. They want to jump in and be a hero.
Mhm.
So I think those things will probably always be in tension. But I think there's also something to the absurd or these very specific moments. Like even in like thinking of horror games, which I don't play a lot of. I like horror a lot as a genre of cinema. I don't always play horror games because I really like sci-fi, and I think you
Hmm.
can have a lot of horror elements in sci-fi, but explore in a way. Like I think horror tends to be more apolitical because if someone is trying to kill you, whether it's a
Yeah.
realistic thriller slasher or it's like a ghost, that matters a lot more in the moment. You know what I mean? So you kind of can't get into like a lot of deep stuff usually.
Unless the
But
person trying to kill you is the government. Hey
well, but
yo.
yeah, exactly. But then is the genre horror, right? So I think the question is that's just work, right? That's
Right.
life. But I think what I was going to say is some of them, like we just interviewed Lawrence Phillips about Il Fantasma del Giallo, and that game similar to the Sleeping Deaths that Plus One XP published, which is a story game. So one is multiplayer adventure game, one is single player journal game, but they're both similar in that you go back and forth from states of like dreamy.
Hmm.
You're the actor or you're in the movie or the show,
Yeah.
and they handle it somewhat differently, but they both have these ideas of like um, downtime and adventure time, but the adventure time is like surreal. You're trapped in a movie that's kind of horrific, and
Hmm.
I think that is so different from you see. I'm getting at like this the traditional like we're going to Mount what's it called um, Mordor. Where's the main mountain in Mordor? I don't know. I can. It's on
Oh,
Google
Mount
Maps.
Doom. Mount
Yeah, yeah,
Doom,
Mount
right?
Doom. There you
Yeah.
go. And we're gonna get rid of the cursed object or whatever. And I think different kinds of odysseys and different kinds of like back and forths might also be a way to shake it up, where you still have adventure mode and downtime mode, but they're very different feeling because downtime mode for an adventure it's like does Captain America need to go to the DMV and would that be interesting, or is it more interesting to have a different setup where you're at you know you have different troubles on set than you do in the movie, you know what I mean, in that kind of example. So I think somewhat it's like I think it's a correct problem many people are dealing with of a fatigue around everyone going, it's like there's a line to get to Mount Doom nowadays, you know what I mean, like metaphorically.
Everybody's taking selfies before they go in the cave.
They're always taking selfies with the Balrogs and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. We're going to MF Doom. Yeah, going to MF Doom, Mount MF Doom would be much more fun.
There was a
Um,
game a while back called Sleep is Death. This is probably like 2010s, I think. The premise of the game is it's for two people. One person is the game master, for lack of a better term, and the other person is the player. The game master sets up a scene. They draw it on the screen. You can use like stamps and stuff to make it, and then they have, I think, after the initial scene, the player has, I think, 10 seconds to act, and they have to interact with the scene somehow, or they have to describe what they're doing, and then it goes back to the game master, and then they have to update the screen to change how they want it to look, to show the response to the player's input, and it keeps going back and forth. But there was one example of this I saw where the game master presented Pac-Man. So it was like in the Atari version of Pac-Man, very like lo-fi, and the player's like, oh, I'm gonna like chomp all the ghosts and eat all the pellets, and then the guy's like, yeah, you're doing it, you did so great, awesome. Whole board is wiped, it's just the maze, and he's still there, and it's like, well, what are you gonna do now? And
oh
so it
no,
became,
yeah.
yeah, it became like, what does Pac-Man do once he's fulfilled his purpose?
Yeah, it's
um
the last tree on Rapa Nui thing, which like there's real questions over whether like how how to read into that, but just the idea that you could live on an island and literally choose to chop down the last tree, right, and be that guy who's like, fuck it, I want some wood.
well, so after a couple back and forths of him moving around the map and being all alone, then the game master presented a single ghost, and then the guy's like, well, I guess I'll die. And so he walked into the ghost, which is it's that one experiment with the people shocking themselves because they were bored. It's like, same kind of
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, exactly. Well, or just like how like all these things are frames. I mean, there's different literature in psychology and the social sciences to discuss this, but yeah, your frames can be changed. And I do think there's games actually that play with this to some degree, like Triangle Agency,
Hmm.
and I think and Paranoia, right, famously.
Hmm.
But I think
Hmm.
you could also think of it more with adventure games that don't do that. Current and even I will say again, Stillfleet, it does feel like another one of these like missed opportunity things of like, well, how do we have a moment, a tilt where the frame changes from pre-revolutionary moment to
Hmm.
revolutionary moment, and like what would that look like? Is there a heat mechanic that seems
Hmm.
overly simple, what is the like not like correct way to do that? But I like the idea of pushing the yes anding, right? It's a classic
Yeah.
improv thing in that scenario of like, okay, you are Pac-Man, okay, Pac-Man's
Yeah.
good at eating all the shit, he eats all the ghosts, all the pellets, okay, he's still in the maze.
Yeah.
It's like it is a little bit of a weird, it's like, it feels like you'd have to add another element if that
it,
was like a
it feels
game to
it
like
feels a
do
bit like
something.
everyone's to make Sisyphus pushing the ball up the boulder up the hill. But like, what is Sisyphus if he doesn't have the boulder, right? Like, so what is that like? What does Sisyphus do then when he can no longer do this thing he's been doing for eternity?
Yeah, yeah. Or all these I think that's one of the interesting problems of people forgetting that all those old Greek stories were teaching tools. They were like
Mhm.
easy to remember metaphors, and then people got really into like, no, 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 but like, when will it end, or like, how will it end? And I think Prometheus's liver. I mean, there's all these questions about sort of time and infinity that are almost definitionally unanswerable. I mean, scientists do you think about this. There's a new movement in math. I feel like I did bring this up on Why We Roll, but some mathematicians saying infinity is a concept we should get rid of. Like, it's mathematically unstable because everything is ultimately countable. It's just very, very large. But there's
That's
nothing that's truly infinite in nature. So why would we represent it as such?
big number hates infinity.
Yeah, so is this? It's like the unfinity movement, and it was just like wild to be like, that is bizarre that you guys are trying to define how big a number can be without being infinite. Feels like that one's like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it'll be fruitful in some
I'm
higher
not enough
math
of a
later.
math expert to have an expert opinion on this, but it
Yeah,
seems like a bad idea.
it seems kind of dumb, right? It seems
Yeah.
like, I don't know, guys. Maybe it's forest trees thing happening there. Um, well, with that, so we
Yeah.
talked a little about computer games. We talked a little about kind of fun inversion, like ideas in game design. I think you've been also working on some card games as well. I don't know if you
Oh,
want to talk a little about
yeah,
other
sure.
games you've been working on and what the status is. I don't always, I know you have multiple ideas. One that I've play
Yeah.
tested at least one version of, which is really fun, is this dueling samurai kind of game where you pick cards and fight
So
basically.
the the premise of the game, I came up with the idea after watching a documentary about Miyamoto Musashi, the famed Japanese swordsman. Supposedly, apocryphally, he won 53 duels and never lost one. I've heard that he like technically lost one against the spear guy, but I don't have a record of that or anything. And record keeping wasn't great back then, anyways. But a very accomplished guy wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings. So I was watching this documentary and I was like, what if there was a dueling card game where it was just like brutal as can we curse on here? We can curse, right? Yeah, cool. Brutal as fuck. So the idea is a lot of planning, a lot of like setup, a lot of like preparation, and then like one just like nasty ass duel where you're just like trying to kill each other and the game can end at any point. And I really wanted to avoid typical tropes for combat based or dueling based card games. Namely, like there's no hit points, there's not really any injury. There's just like the assumption is that both players are expert swordsmen, and heck, Vex says we're a cursing only podcast. Fuck yes. Um,
Yeah,
so
we'll get booted if every sentence doesn't contain some cussing. Please continue.
yeah, like we're supposed to be expert swordsmen, and so if left to our own devices and unmitigated, it's death. If I want to kill you with my sword, I'm going to make that happen. Except your expertise is the only thing that stops you, rather stops me, stops you from dying. So the step one of this was I wanted to do some research. Like I'd read the Book of Five Rings, but I wanted to refresh on it. And so the more I read about it when reading it was I realized that it's been translated like a zillion times and every single person has translated it differently. So step one in the research process was like, I'm going to gather the six best, and that's very subjective, but the six best translations of it. And then I'm going to do a stanza by stanza breakdown, put all the things next to each other, and then use that as my reference material for the game. And so that's this guy. Um, you really can't see it with the blurring, but you have to trust me that it's all there. Um, yeah.
We
Um,
trust you.
yeah, yeah.
It's there. Yeah.
So it's six different translations. What the my favorite passage in it, which I'm not going to look up because it would take me a minute to find it, but my favorite passage is the one where it describes the color of water. Anyone who's familiar with Japanese language, there's aoi and there's midori. Aoi meaning like blue, but also green, or just other cool colors, and midori meaning specifically green. Um, thanks, Vex. Um, and so in the various translations, like they describe it as different colors. So, like some of it's like a pale blue, sometimes it's a green, it's all meant to describe like the color of water, but they all had different translations. And there's even a couple times where the subjective meaning of the passage was completely different in two of the translations, and I don't have it handy, but I will have to find it. Anyways, so I have the source material, and then the first draft of the game I did, which I played with you a couple years ago, it was just the basic idea of like, we would do a bunch of planning, and then we would have 5 cards, and the 5 cards would be what we're dueling with, and that's it. And then so the idea was that it was meant to be a whole lot of planning and then a really, really short duel that's just going to end fast. The current iteration of it kind of inverts that a little bit. The planning phase happens a lot faster, but it's simpler and the choices are easier. I reduced a lot of the information on the cards. I added more repeated cards, so there's a little bit more you can learn the game more quickly. So the first 4 drafting phases go through, and you get your cards more quickly. And then the actual duel itself has like a cross arrangement of piles, the 5 piles. I reused the idea of 5 a lot in this just because of the Book of 5 Rings. And you have a hand of 5 cards, and so you're interacting with attacks and things, and each of the cards has a conditional ability that may or may not apply in a given situation. But it's meant to be kind of an expert move that you've learned through your training. All of the drafting in the first phases is done openly, so you know what cards your opponent is taking. You can procedurally run the game very simply just by picking random cards and then just kind of YOLOing it. But also it adds a higher ceiling so that if you become familiar with the game, you can learn what cards your opponent's taking, and you can kind of build your strategy and tactics around that.
Yeah, yeah, it feels a little like a one-on-one Magic draft,
Mhm,
but the thematics. I mean, it's interesting how these things relate, right? All the things you're
mhm,
saying, because you went down this whole rabbit hole around, to some degree, the history of martial arts,
mhm,
which is really what it comes down to. I mean, the impact on Japanese history broadly is arguably small, and on Buddhism is small, but it's like, if you're into the martial arts, like, yeah, this, the Book of 5 Rings is a big deal, and these
mhm,
legends are a big deal. And so, okay, what really happened? What was it really like? How did people at the time describe it? And how do I access this information? And how has it
mhm.
been represented? So I think it's an interesting kind of case of like, you could say micro history around sort of a certain moment in a
Yeah.
famous guy's life 400 years ago or whatever. And then you're like, all right, and then how do I make that into a really fun replayable fighting card game,
Yeah.
which may seem non obvious, except again, if you play a lot of those games, which I know, it's like, that's kind of your thing, right? You're thinking about it the way I'm thinking about, I would say it, story focused, but adventure RPGs or whatever,
Mhm,
right? And I think you did a good job in that. Both versions I played were fun. I do like the new one where the drafting feels pretty intuitive, and then you have a
mhm.
lot of cards to fight with, so it still feels fast. It definitely didn't. It doesn't drag, but
Yeah.
because you have a lot of cards and the drafting does matter, it still has that character of like, your planning matters, but then you get to play through like a whole ass
Mhm,
battle where you're doing a lot of moves, and you can kind of try to imagine how these cards are relating to each other, diegetically. And I think it actually works to me a little better than a game like Magic for someone like me who's real into stories, because Magic has, especially, this is pre Rococo phase where there's Spider-Mans in
Yeah.
Magic. But even back before the Spider-Mans and the Lords of the Rings and whatever, it just, there were so many elements that didn't make sense together, and it was just, planeswalkers summon them. And I think what's interesting about this is it's very tight on the Godai, on this idea of, um, 2 people on the beach fighting with relatively simple weapons. They're both experts, and it's
Mhm.
all about sort of strategy and tactics. And I think that the game, really interestingly gets at those ideas really intuitively without anyone having to know a lot or read a lot. And it pays testament again to research in the same way that I hope people feel about Danse Macabre. You don't have to know a lot of history to
Yeah.
get that Chris has spent a bunch of time reading
I
history. Like, it's the same idea, right? Like, you
That's
did that
something
for us.
I
Yeah.
really appreciated about Danse Macabre is the amount of research that Chris did do into, like, that period of history. And, I've only played it the one time at the conference, and I watched the Fun City guys play it. But it was really cool, like hearing the name of a city or something, be like, "Oh, I've heard of that place." And then I feel like I was learning stuff, which was like, "Are you trying to sneak a history? Like, is this sneaky learning?"
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like it's really not. But as a GM or a game designer, I mean, it's I think that's the analogy I'm drawing. Is I think you got into it because you wanted the game to, and you practice martial arts and were
Mhm,
interested in that history more broadly. But this specific moment was appealing because it's like you had an image for kind of card game experience. You're really good at card game design. You played a bajillion years of Magic. This is the opportunity to kind of bring those things together, and it worked. And I think similarly, Chris spends all this time reading about medieval
mhm.
Europe and now the medieval Middle East, and was like, well, I want to, and I also making RPGs, so it's like, how do I put these things in conversation and
And
without burdening anybody
also,
else?
yeah.
It's just kind of getting it out.
Also,
We have a
how do I get my badass tattoo art into a game? Also,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. How do you do all the things you want to do in a package that anyone else will care about and buy, frankly? Because again, and I know I've had these conversations. You
Mhm,
are not doing it quote unquote for the money, but you've been making games, playing games long enough. You know that people have to buy a thing for it to kind
mhm.
of go anywhere. So you want to make a deck that, even if it again doesn't make you millionaire, and I hope
Yeah,
it
I want
does.
people
It's
to have
like,
fun playing it.
yeah, you
Yeah,
want to make like whatever, $15, right? And be like, hey, I paid for the cost of making the game at least, and people were able to circulate that in stores, et cetera, have tournaments. So I think you do
yeah,
have to think through those things. What does it look like when I play it with my friends? And then if I want more people to play it, what does it look like at a con? How do I teach it quickly?
yeah.
Um,
Taylor Z asked the question: when we were designing the game, were you searching for realism or mythic historic, similar to Tale of the Heike? I was going for uh realism in the sense that there's no like um key powers or anything. Like this is all, you're just swinging a sword around, but like with style. And but at the same time, like I said, there's no injury, so there's no, like, it's not realistic in the sense of tracking bodily harm or the movement through space, really. Um, but like the all of the cards, so this is the prototype, which you won't be able to see the in detail, but that's kind of what it looks like. And the titles of the cards are quotes from the book. So the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. You should not have a favorite weapon. The glue and lacquer body. These are all names of either techniques or like statements and assertions that Musashi makes in the text. Um, and one thing I found really funny from reading all these different translations is like basically the books boil down to you should practice as much as possible, just like practice and train. That should be your whole life. And also, I don't know why anybody would do this thing when you could just win. Like, why would you not just choose to win? The in book 4, the Book of Wind, is all about his thoughts on other schools, which is like, dude, so much shade. He's like, some schools prioritize fancy footwork. I think they should just try to win instead.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's so I think you kind of answered Taylor's question also by like, displaying you're not like your closeness to the text is really tying the game back to Musashi's ideas and at
Mhm.
least things from that era that are historically attested to by popular texts,
Yeah,
from the time that have been passed down and translated and taught continuously. So there's no real sense to think that people didn't think this. Whether or not that's actually the best fighting technique, I don't
right.
have a dog in that fight.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think it's interesting that, yeah, in a way, while fantasy would be appealing, is fantasy so appealing, right? In many of these contexts, whether we're talking about um, Western or quote unquote Asian, so in this case specifically early modern Japanese fantasy, but in many contexts you're like, I don't know, what if there's zombies? I don't know, what if there's fireballs? But in this case you're like, no, it's two people with swords on the beach
Mhm.
or on a pier or whatever, on a bridge. They're in town, they bump into each other, somebody stepped on somebody's Nikes, and now it's on.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually one of the constraints, like, right, it goes back to constraint and where do you
Mhm.
spend a lot of time, where do you not leave the constraints, and what is kind of, I remember you showed me some of those great, I think, GDC videos where it's like,
Mhm.
what are the post-it notes you've like taped above your
Yeah.
desk, right? And so I think in this case you have this, like, for this game it's just Book of Five Rings, the game. Like, there's
Yeah.
no other inputs. It doesn't matter how other cool ideas
It's a
there are
very
around.
tight space. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it shows again at the level, like, I love reading those cards, and even though I've read this book, I'm not a
Mhm.
martial artist. I don't really. It's not my area of history, and it's just as like it's like reading Martian poetry. I mean, they
Yeah.
really are very poetic, and there's hundreds of the names, and they're just like they're bonkers. I mean, they're just interesting because it's the same reason when you first pick up a game like Magic, it's interesting. Is you're like,
Hmm.
you do want to know about all the whatever they're called,
Uh,
slivers, or all the
okay.
little creatures and their histories and the flavor text. So it's interesting. You're like, okay, these are all things this guy said.
Yeah.
Do not have a favorite weapon. I love that that's a card, and it makes it's like,
It's
hey, don't get too attached to your sword. You may not always have a sword on you.
well, so the other thing, speaking of the constraints, is I wanted to take all of the lines that I pulled, and I wanted it to be expressed mechanically. And so sometimes it made obvious sense. Like you shouldn't have a favorite weapon. That's pretty apparent what he's meaning there. Other times it was a bit more a little less obvious what the intention was, like piercing the corner, for example. It means attacking the weak part, or like crumpling in. You're coming in from the corner of their formation so that you can then cave them in from that edge, because that's where you can get the most grab on them. But like the you shouldn't have a favorite weapon card. Is what this is you choose a card type, and then opponent like loses all cards of that card type from their hand. And so if someone was like over representing a particular type of card in their hand, oh, guess what? You don't have access to that now because I just played this card. And so
Right.
I try to do that with all the cards. I wanted them to feel like when you're playing it, you can kind of understand to some degree what the meaning was in the martial arts context, from the original text, or at the very least that it wasn't misrepresenting it.
Right.
So like it shouldn't feel antithetical to what Musashi was describing. So I was trying to really like honor the original intent of what he was trying to do.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it's that kind of order of priorities thing
Hmm.
that we've touched on in this conversation, but definitely elsewhere, where it's like it's not a didactic game, it's not teaching history,
Hmm.
but if you use the history as a constraint and you're not going to break from the history,
Hmm.
then you only allow yourselves certain breakages or no breakages or whatever, then like you're going to end up changing the cards a little as you're like, oh
Hmm.
shit, well that's not in the book, so it can't be in the cards or whatever
Right.
it is.
Right.
Or like you said, I have to match the cards to these phrases that I don't have perfect understanding of. Maybe nobody does. Maybe it's kind of not that deep in the end, but it's like it
Hmm.
has to be fun in a card game. It has to be a big deal when you're like, I use this card. So, no, it's cool. What is
Yeah.
the status of this game? Do you have thoughts on that since we last play tested it
um
many months ago?
I'm still I'm still iterating on it. There's some the feedback that I'm getting still. I played with my old gaming group in Indiana a couple weeks ago, and it still needs a little bit of work. There's a couple cards that are a little overpowered that I'm trying to balance out, and there's still like I have to find better ways to communicate like certain game actions, so that it doesn't require like constant rules referencing. So I've got some ideas that I wanted to try for like the next iteration on it. Those are like in progress. Um, I don't I feel like it's if I had to pick a number, I'd say it's like 2/3 of the way there. The people that have played it have said, like, "It's not ready yet. However, you should keep building this." Like, it feels like it's on the correct path. Like, this will lead to something cool, but we're still on the journey, though. We're still, like, climbing the mountain. We're not at the top yet. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's the right brief, but it may not be
yeah.
the final execution. It's the right concept even. It's
Yeah.
not just the brief. It's narrowed down to like what the game is, and it's just
Right.
tweaking in a way the procedures and the back and forth and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. That's good that it feels still right in your head, regardless of loading bar status. Essentially, I still think it'd be great when you can to really find the right maybe
Mhm.
art or graphic design, illustrator, graphic designer, maybe
Yeah.
someone who is Japanese or has a very direct tie, because I think that would add a
Absolutely.
certain other point of like articulation or another kind of constraint or another way to have the conversation around like how to make this game feel maximally exciting using this sort of source material, and building a
Yeah.
truly fun. It's not a history book; it's a fun card game. So
Currently it uses a mixture of actual Edo period art that I pulled that's in the public domain because it's so old. So I tried to at least grab something that was roughly around that same time period. And then for the remainder of the cards, I used Adobe Firefly in Photoshop, which is generative AI, but like supposedly it's like okay, whatever. I needed placeholders, and it was faster to do it this way. it is like the art is like laughably like wrong. Like so they're holding
Well,
his swords
you're talking about
backwards
a
and
playtest deck, to be clear, right? You're
yes, yeah,
using
no, not for
AI for
final.
playtesting,
Yeah,
and yeah,
purely
again, like
prototyping. This is
depending on
just
what you would choose, it would be a very different. I think it's a different conversation to say
yeah.
I'm making a deck to playtest with my friends versus like mass produce, right?
No, yeah, this is not intended for final. I would never sign off on this. It's some of it is so laughably bad. I just wanted something that had the general feeling for the card. And that was just like occupying space instead of putting just a big X where the image would
Right,
go,
right.
or stick figures or
Well, and
something.
I've played. You often do these games where it's all typed, but you
Hmm.
do already use color and font and weight
Hmm.
to create cards where you kind of instantly know the kind of thing you're doing, even if you've
Hmm.
never played the game. And I think that is actually it's. I mean, not to say you shouldn't, at some point be able to work with a professional graphic designer who spends all day doing that, but it's like
Hmm.
you have a sense of graphic design and you bring it to games, and that is part of the procedure making, the game design part, and they're not like unrelated in a sense because
Sure.
you have to order so much information. Like even with a one and done deck, there's no extensions planned. It's still like enough just points. It's enough names of
Hmm.
things. What do they do? What's a symbol versus not a symbol? So again, I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
The two versions I saw, the one with just text and the one with art, both were easy to more or less figure out kind of where you were with again, is it more complex than like say Magic, which again is
Hmm.
five things. That's why I bring it up in part.
Right.
I don't know that it's more complex. I mean, it's one deck, but it's still a lot of information to take in, and it is a different game, right? It's half drafting, so it's very fun kind of combo of what do I want to draft, what is my strategy, I think, and
Yeah.
then yeah, what am I going to do in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And as Vex points out, yeah, cards are a lot of design. They look so small and beautiful. They are a pain in the ass, let me tell you, to
Yeah.
get those little guys to look right, with all the
The,
information clearly, presented.
on the game design subreddit, the feedback I have the most often on other people's card games is you need more contrast because your text is not readable, and the you need more white space. Those are usually the two biggest things: is more contrast, more white space. Like readability of the cards. If you can't at least get a sense of what the card says from like arm's length away, then it's you need to fix that. Because like the cards are the way the player interacts with your game system, and so that needs to have a prioritization of like you have to prioritize the user interface essentially because that's how the people are interacting with your thing. So
Yeah, it's a
all
great point.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think because I always wonder this. As we make books, right? At the end of the
Mhm.
day, really. Um, and I'm always thinking of the Charmin Bears because my wife used to work on the Charmin Bears commercials. But the Saturday Night Live or whatever sketch where it's like we take shits or whatever, like that's what the Bears do. We wipe ass. So that's what he says. We
Yeah.
wipe ass. So anyway, we make books.
Yeah.
And so when I see board games and card games, they have these little tiny booklets on flimsy like
Mhm.
50 GSM paper. And it's like tissue paper, and you're like, "Why is this?" But it's exactly for what you just said. Is you read the book once, you basically chuck it back in the box. You never look at it. The
Mhm.
game is all the other pieces, the tokens, the cards, and that is how you interact with the game. That is the game. It is the play space.
Yeah.
It's what allows the diegesis to spring up. And it's not really the same with books and RPGs as much as there's hero art. People look at the cover, but once you're in the mode of an RPG, I do think that is a genuine difference because it's a story
Mhm.
game at the end of the day. Um, it is the procedures that are the game in a way that the art is just helping you remember the procedures, or really it's just there for marketing. I mean, it's mostly there for
Yeah.
marketing. Whereas I do think with cards that's not the case, right? With a winnable finite true game, that is the game. The game is the card, and whatever's on it is part of that experience. Obviously, the flavor text matters less than the rules, but it's interesting from how the graphic design again enters into that conversation.
The other thing about that too, regarding like typeface and designing of a card is you want to prioritize scannability. So if I have to actually read the card, if I have to read the text line by line, that is like effort that will take me out of the immersion of the game. So, one of the reasons that Magic the Gathering is so successful with their card layout and why everybody replicates it is because you can look at the card and the same like three spots on the card is going to have relevant info. They use symbols for most of the like heavy keyword concepts, and and the text is readable and it's kept brief. Um, so I like that's a really important thing that I also think
Yeah,
should be, initially prioritized.
I
Also,
agree.
yeah, I
Yeah.
fully agree. Readability, Henchman said, and yes,
We love readability.
yeah.
No, I was just going to agree. And I think from the RPG space, when I look at games like Genesis that have tried to do the same with RPGs and they don't work that way, I think it's for the reason I stated, which is that is not the same for the books. For the books, you're just trying to have people get a feel for the procedure, and the procedure is the game because it's a story. And
Mhm.
I think that misunderstanding of like what an RPG is, even though they, in some ways, nerddom wise, they're very close together. Most people who play a D&D type game also play a Magic, but at the end of the day, from a game design, from a philosophical perspective, they're very different because they're just, one is a true game and one is not a game in that sense. It's not winnable.
Mhm.
Unless you do make a weird winnable RPG, which is a thing now, but I don't care. That's not adventure games. That's not the spirit of getting on the gondola to go up to Mount MF Doom and toss your ring in and take a selfie, just like they did in the books. Okay. On that note, we're out
Yeah.
of time. But Aaron, are there other things
Oh,
we basically focused on SHINKEN or whatever you
yeah.
end up naming the game?
Right.
I still think that's a cool name, and
I think it's cool name
Eldrow,
too. Yeah.
which apparently has been renamed Word Snare, which is also a great name. But I will continue to call Eldrow. What else? Is there anything else you want to shout out? Anything you want to talk about that we didn't get a chance to? Happy to chat again. We're really just catching up on air.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
buds in the chat.
Man, I don't know, honestly. Those are the big things I got going on right now. Yeah, I don't know. I'm
Cool.
looking for work. If anyone's hiring a seasoned web developer, hire me.
Yes. Hire Aaron. Aaron's very smart.
Yes,
Very fun
please.
to work with. Yeah, no, and we should talk more at some point. Maybe post. Assuming you'll get a new job any day,
Mhm.
knocking on the wood. We can talk about that, and that was one reason we initially put that together. Was how do
Mhm.
you decide to use your time differently on game design when as a hobby or as a small business side hustle, right? When you also have other obligations. So that was
Mhm.
again kind of a thematic. Thank you so much, everyone who watched in the chat. Thanks, Aaron, so much for sharing your
Yeah.
time and updating us on
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Word
This has been great.
Snare, which
Yeah.
people might see Word
Oh,
Snare in the App Store near them at some point.
yeah, that's the hope. If you want to play it now, you can play it online, the web version, which has most of the features. That's the one we demoed here was the web version. Most of the features of the iOS version. The iOS is a little bit more polished, but I try to keep them both synchronized. So
Cool.
feel free to try it out. And hit me up. My email at gmail.com. My username at gmail.com.
Cool. So everyone
Yeah.
go to check out aaronh.games, and you can get the version that has, I think, the dyslexia font, but it does
Mhm.
not have the curse that you can pass on to your buds
Exactly
by
that.
choosing
Yes.
the exact wrong word.
Yeah. You can't send penis to your friend. Yeah.
No.
Not on the web version. That's iOS only. Yeah.
But you could send them. What did you say? Not to do spines. Words with a lot of E's and R's and S's and A's.
Right.
All right, thanks everyone.
Cool.
We're shutting down, but we will be back next week for a traditional Why We Roll interview with some new game designers. Again, Aaron, thanks. We've always happy to have you on and chat. And thanks a lot to everybody in the chat. Vex Taylor, my little brother, and what's up? We saw. I don't want to blink on the name. Oh, Henchman. What's up, Henchman?
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody.
See ya.